something we're going to do a little different here. I don't know exactly, nothing's planned. Nothing's really planned, but there is a plan. So you see these couple chairs? We're going to have a few of you sit in it. So come on up here, Jim, Pastor Jim, and I'll give the microphone to him. I'm trying to think, looking around. I wanted to. Everybody left. Do you want this? You got? Can I turn it off? Turn it on?
Yeah, you can turn it off. It's already off.
It's already off. Surprise. All right, there you go.
Is that okay then? All right, so a couple weeks ago, Pastor Dan, me and him were talking, and he said, well, what are we going to do for the Sunday before Valentine's Day? And I said, we could do a panel discussion. And we could ask Dan, we could ask you and Shonna some questions. So I didn't get many questions from people, but I did compile a few questions of my own. And me and Sierra came up with some questions. Me and your sister-in-law, so that'll be fun. So Shonna, come on up. Dan, take a seat. Is this okay that we do this for a little bit today? Yes. Okay. All right. Give our pastors a big hand as they come.
Oh, I don't need this.
They do a lot of stuff and a lot of things and behind the scenes, and they're going and they're doing a lot of stuff at a lot of times. So give them a big hand once more. All right. Let's see if we can get Dan to stay in one spot.
That's easy.
Okay, so my first question. Everybody ready for the first question? Yes. First question is for Dan. How long have you been married?
29 years. 30? 28. It's in that area. 28, it's not 30 and it's probably 28. It will be 29.
We've been married 28 years.
Right.
We'll be married 29 in April.
Question was for me. So was it 20, it was, what'd you say? It was 28 years. Got that one.
Okay.
500 points.
Good job. Good job. Give him big, that's good. He got in the ballpark. He got in the ballpark. All right. So this will be fun. Either one of you can answer, but I'm curious how you both describe it. When and how did you both meet?
Want my version or your version? How did we meet? Well, I first saw her, I was preaching at a Cowboys for Christ in Steelville, Missouri. Her dad invited me from college, and I went and preached down there, but she didn't talk to me or nothing. She was like stuck up and left with her friends. But I left
because my dad said, "You see that guy up there preaching?"
Listen, this is pretty wild. I never met her, and the dad called it and said, "That's going to be your future husband."
I said, "No."
Did you hear what she said? She said no.
But my dad had told me, I don't know, maybe a month or so before we met Dan. My dad said, "Just so you know, you were going to marry a preacher." And I said, "No." I said, "Have you ever seen a preacher turn my head? I don't think so." So I show up to this meeting that my dad insisted that I come to because he had people coming from a college, and this was my senior year in high school, and it was Christmas. And he's like, "You need to come to this meeting." He goes, "Well, there's going to be a bunch of college students there and everything." And I was like, okay. So I showed up late and listened to him preach. And I sat down by my dad. And as Dan's preaching, he looks at me and he goes, "You see that man preaching?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's your future husband." And I said, "No way." And he's like,
and she left.
And I left. As soon as it was over, I left. I didn't meet him, nothing. So anyways, and then time went by. That was in December.
28 years ago.
29. Actually, it's 30 because we've been married that time. We've been seeing each other for 30 years almost now. So, but so anyways, and then from that was like in April or something. Spring rolled around, and I showed up to church, and there he was at church, and I'm like, "What on earth? You've got to be kidding me!" I did not dare talk to him. I was like, what is he doing here? Well, he was rodeoing with some people that went to church with us, and so he had come up, and they lived in Stillville. And so he had came up and had rodeoed with them and then just came on to church with them. And I'm like, oh, my goodness. Well, then, I don't know, it was a little later in May, my phone rings at home. Of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. And the phone rang at home, and I answered it. And the guy on the phone said, can I talk to Rick? And I said, may I ask who's calling? Because my dad always wants to know who's on the phone. So you always ask, may I ask who's calling? And he said, it's Dan Morrison. I didn't even dawn on me who Dan Morrison was or nothing. And my dad, I go, Dad, Dan Morrison's on the phone. He goes, you know who that is? And I said, no, I don't know who that is. He goes, that's your future husband. And I'm like, oh my gosh! I'm like, oh, now he's calling my dad? Oh, no. So my dad talks to him or whatever, and then that summer rolled around, and I had showed up to church a few times, and I was just like, oh my goodness, trying to avoid the whole situation. And
Such love.
Needless to say, I always thought he was a hot guy. Like, I always thought, oh my gosh, he is like gorgeous, but I had to avoid the situation. I wasn't really letting my dad give me my husband here,
It was so bad that I had to ask her questions like, what's your favorite tree? And
Yeah.
she wouldn't respond to anything, so I had to
I
make
wouldn't
things
talk to
up
him.
to get her to respond.
But so then as time went, like, I don't know, it was probably by this time it was June, July, and he shows up. I had graduated high school and was out, that summer, went camping with some people for a week and was just gone off and on. And I called Mom about something, and she's like, you really need to come home. And I'm like, why do I need to come home? And she's like, you just really need to come home. She's like, there's this tall, dark, and handsome guy, and he has got a beautiful smile hanging around here. And I'm like, what? And she's like, it's Dan Morrison. And I'm like, I'm not coming home. She's like, come, Shonna, you got to come home. So anyways, I finally come home, and he had started working for my dad. He had come up to Stillville for the summer and was working for my dad. My dad gave him a job, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So then my dad's like, you need to go help that guy. I'm like, I'm not helping that guy. He's like, yeah, he really needs some help. You need to help that guy. So he would send me on. He needed to send him to the feed store. Oh my, here comes our beautiful grandbaby. And he needed to go get something from the feed store. Well, mind you, we did not have cell phones back then, and he needed directions on how to get to the feed store in Bourbon. And I'm like, my dad told him, he's like, you just need to ride with him. I'm like, I'm not riding with him. And he was standing right here. And my dad's like, get in that truck. I'm like, I'm not getting in that truck. My dad's like, get in that truck, Shonna. And I was like, no, I'm not getting in that truck. And we argued, and finally I had to take a deep breath and get in the truck. And we went for a ride.
Feel the compassion.
But in the meantime of all of this, for me to be so hard-headed and everything else, I was told, I do have a benefit, I was told he was engaged to get married. So me being me
I'm leaving.
was not going to get involved because that wasn't my place. And so anyways, I was avoiding the situation then. And so we went, and I took him, showed him directions. I don't know how many times we had to go for trips to get stuff. And I wouldn't talk to him. Would not talk to him.
Absolutely.
He would ask me questions, and I would give him just the answer. I would nothing elaborated, nothing. And I don't know how many different times we did this. And he would ask me, what's your favorite tree? What's your favorite color? I would just say it, and I wouldn't even say, what's yours? Nope, I wasn't having no communication here. And finally, after, I couldn't tell you how many different trips, I looked at him, and he kept asking. And I just stopped, and I said, wait. I said, you are asking me all these different questions, and why would you be interested in me when you are engaged to get married? And he just looked at me. He's like, engaged to get married? What are you talking about? And I was like, I was told that you were engaged to get married. And he said, I'm not engaged to get married. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that just opened up a whole nother door. I started talking to him. And he would tell my mom and dad, she doesn't talk, she's quiet. My mom and dad's like, you don't know her. And anyways, I could keep going. Do you want me to finish? So then, I don't know, it was fair time in Cuba. Mind you, again, we don't have cell phones. And he's at my house and my phone rings. And I answer the phone. And it was a girl. And she asked if Dan Morrison was there. And I was like, there's a girl on the phone asking for you. And I asked who's calling. And she goes, yeah, it's Camille. That was his fiance.
Is this being recorded?
Yes, it
It's
is.
not live on
Oh my
Facebook.
goodness! Oh my goodness!
Facebook Live is down. So it's not
Facebook
on-
Live is down.
Hallelujah!
But anyways, I was like, oh my gosh. Well, kind of find out, he had started to ask her to marry him and told him that he would come back for her. But he had met me in the meantime and didn't go back. So I won. How's that sound?
There you are.
He was my prize to be won, and I won. Do you have a different version?
So, Dan, what was your first impression? She's given us her first impression.
I need
was
some
your
water.
first
I need
impression?
some water. Oh my goodness! I don't think I've ever heard you say it so
Oh,
clearly.
and by the way, they never saw any of these questions, so they didn't know anything.
Do you like our panel?
That was a long time ago. No,
Get your child under control.
so you okay with this for just a minute? So what was your question for me?
What was your first impression of Shonna?
Her first impression was like, you know, when the Bible talks about when Jesus was transfigured and all the glory and all the stuff. But the first time I saw Shonna was at the Steelville, or the first time after the rodeo thing, but I saw her in the grocery store with my rodeo buddies, and she come walking across the parking lot, and it was honestly, I might use it, it was like the transfiguration. Everything went slow motion, and I could just see her coming, and I could tell you what she was still wearing. And then I was in awe. After that, I just said, I was in awe. I don't know how to explain it to you. You don't remember that, but she had the white and green polka dot shirt and a pair of shorts, and she wasn't paying no attention to me, but I just remember everything going in slow motion. And if I'd known what I know now, I would have said, is this the transfiguration? Because you're sure glowing. But she, so that was the first time I met her. And then after that, she would never talk to me, so it was really kind of strange. But she taught me, like when we did the horse trailer thing, I grew up around semis and stuff like that. She had to tell me how to hook up like those gooseneck trailers and all your, I knew bumper pulls and semis, but I never saw a gooseneck ball in the back of a truck, and she had to show me how to do it. So
Hey, we made a great team.
we did. Other than she wouldn't talk to me, she just said, it goes right there, just crank it down, and there you go. So that was my first impression. Then after that, I met her at church. Now this is really crazy. Stand up, Sierra. This is her younger sister. Now the thing you look, she's an old, no, not old, but but when I met her, she was only 2, and Shonna was carrying her, so I thought that was her kid. So I was really kind of, whoa, I thought it was her kid, so that my whole world was, it was just strange. And then same thing, when I found out, I just remember finding out that it wasn't her kid, and I was like, whew, because I just didn't know if I was ready for anything like that. But anyhow.
He's ready to be a dad, did you?
All I remember that is her carrying, I remember I was at church, you wore a long black dress with a bunch of polka dots on it, carrying your little baby. So I just sat over to the other side. So that's about it, nothing real fancy.
Move his glasses. It's muffling his mic.
Oh, I'm fidgeting. It's hot up here.
So you got married April 15th, 1995.
Five.
Yep.
So we got, we dated and dated and engaged and married in 10 months. So my dad was right.
That's true.
There's
That's
a lot of
crazy.
Rick being right up here today.
I know.
10
Don't
months.
tell him.
So, okay, so what was your first few years of marriage like?
Rough, hard. And it's a miracle we're here today. In all honesty, is it not? It was pretty rough. We came from a different background of how our, not necessarily values or things, but just the way we was raised differently. And we weren't raised like bad people. We didn't know how to communicate. We didn't know if I was upset. I would say it this way. When I would get upset or didn't like something, I would just exit. I might have been there, but I would just exit the relationship or exit and go put myself somewhere else and do what I had to do. I'd be nice and polite, answer her questions, but I wasn't really there. And she didn't know how to communicate that, and I didn't know how to communicate to her. So it was pretty rough, wouldn't you say? It was good, great, and rough. Does that sound right? But I will say there were some transitions in life, and I remember the time when I had a choice to make. I had a choice. I've learned this in marriage, that being right or any relationship, just being right doesn't mean that's the way to go with it. And I've learned that a relationship's not 50-50. Who's 50 gets divided up. I've learned that it's 100-100. If you're in 100 and they're in 100, then you're in. And there was never any really issues with trust or anything like that or any kind of thing. We just didn't know how to communicate. Would I say that? We just didn't know how to communicate. And it got to the point.
We're both the oldest and we're both bullheaded.
Yeah.
So that did not mix well.
Yeah, she was hard.
You should play Monopoly with them.
Oh my gosh, no, you shouldn't.
They are both trying to evict the other person.
So really that's how it was. And I go back to the story years ago when it got so bad in this conversation that she worked for Mobile then as a clerk. And she had actually moved to another store, and I didn't even know she'd moved. That's how bad our communication had gotten. And then I come home one day, and she wasn't there and left me a note. And it wasn't, she just left. And I come from a broken family, so that freaked me out. And when that broken family, I went all back to those emotions. And I remember talking to somebody on the phone, and they basically said, you got a choice to make, either right or wrong. And I remember when Shonna came back to the door, she came with Lisa. She came with Lisa to the door, and I remember her standing there at the end of the door, and I remember instead of doing all the screaming or yelling or whatever it was that we did, I just walked up to her and gave her a big hug. And I remember in our world, that was a transition where I made a choice for myself, and we sat down on this big, huge, wraparound blue couch, and that started a journey of us learning how to communicate. And it wasn't, and we chose to we're not going to bring up all this stuff, but we're going to pick up where we're at and learn how to communicate. Maybe we didn't say it that way, but once we learned to communicate, and from then on, it just kept growing and getting better. And we had good role models of people that would help us. I've learned in marriage and relationships, it's good to find good role models to look at people, ask questions, how do you do this and how do you do it? And that helped us. That helped me out a lot. And then I think when you remember that time when we did that, and we prayed, and things started. It's never been the same since that point in our journey. I really say that was a big transition.
And we were probably married at that point, not quite a year. It was coming up on a year.
You're probably 15.
I was 15?
Yeah,
I was 15.
Long time ago.
So you bring up communication.
Yeah.
So how has your communication with one another changed?
I'll just keep talking. So communication has been awesome.
Communication, I think, goes along with trust. And so that is the key thing for any kind of marriage or relationship. If you can't communicate and you can't trust each other, you're already doomed from the very beginning. But that is key in marriage. And we have tried to make, communicating, that communication is valued for any kind of a relationship. Communication, if you don't communicate with somebody, you're not going anywhere. You're not growing, you're not developing, you're not going to grow an intimacy with that person. And it's the same with God. If you don't communicate with God and talk to Him and have a valueness with Him, you're not going to go anywhere. It's not going to grow. And so in a marriage, you've got to have a communication with each other and make each other a priority. And if you don't have that, you don't have a future in that. And so I highly say, if you want a good relationship with your spouse or with your children or people around you, you have to communicate. And you've got to talk to them. And that takes down walls and that builds lives. And so I highly say, we communicate. Sometimes we don't communicate as well as others. Me, I could sit there and be quiet. It don't bother me to be quiet. He can be quiet too. You know, we just came back from Oklahoma, and I think the whole way back, we didn't communicate. You know, I mean, I was fine. But he's like, you don't talk. Well, I talk all the time. Sometimes I just need to be quiet. And but you do. I mean, you do have to talk to each other and communicate.
Wouldn't you say that we laugh too?
Oh, yeah.
Learning to laugh at our insecurity type things, or laughing. I've learned as we've gotten older, learning to laugh at each other versus the other way around. Or
I laugh at him all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
So
Used to mess with my ego all the time. She's laughing at me. Here I am now that we've learned to laugh and communicate. It's just a whole lot easier to grow and to do and things like that. But I would say we do a lot of laughing at each other in a way of communicating some of the things we do. Like if we put something together, I would tell you that the first time we put a swing set together, I thought, this is it, I'm done, I'm out of here. We were arguing so bad, and she was reading it, I could see the pictures and she's reading the instructions, and it was like 100 degrees, and Jessica was trying to get on the swing. It took us like 3 days, and we even had friends afterward ask us, would you help it? No, I'm not messing with the swing set, man, because it was nothing but a fight and an argument, because she's reading it, and I'm looking at the pictures, and we ended up putting half of the nuts and bolts on wrong. I did, and I took it out on her. But anyhow, but over the time of doing things like that, we laugh at each other. Now, when we go to put something together, I'll say, hey, I can't read this, and she'll go, goofball, it's in Spanish. You need to turn it around or something, because I don't have my glasses on. But we'll laugh at that, or she'll laugh. We can do things. We can take on projects that used to be stressful on us.
Yeah, don't dare ask me to work with him, because it would have been a nightmare.
And now we can smile and laugh. And
He's learned to chill in his old age.
Well, that was a question is, could you almost say that you don't take things as serious now?
Well, as we learn to communicate, we break those barriers. We don't assume. We kept assuming. As we assumed, that would be the thing that would kill the communication. We assumed, and then I learned from Brother Jim years ago. He used to say, I don't run on radar. You got to share with what's going on. So I'd say, you got to help me understand this. I don't run on radar. If there's something going on, tell me, or vice versa. And that helped us a lot with our communication to try to. And then when she did tell me something, I didn't. And I learned she doesn't say you're right, or there's been times where she could have said, you ding dong, you messed this up, I did right, and she's right in there going, good, bad, or indifferent, I'm here for you. Does that and support me where she could have, and we might laugh at it, but instead of being rude and putting me down, made a mistake or did something wrong, she will encourage me to, I don't think you'll be doing that again, or she'll use a different way to communicate instead of, am I saying that right? I would say, and that's been life-changing for me, to know that no matter what, she's there for me. Does that make any sense? And I've done some things that she didn't necessarily was on board with, and it didn't work out just right. Instead of her saying, I told you so, or you shouldn't have done that, she was there grabbing my hand and praying prayers like, we're givers, we're tithers, we're the head and not the tail. Everything we're to put her hand to will prosper. And that does something for a man when he walks out the door, when your wife is supporting you on something that doesn't look like it's going the best, or doing things when that just changes your whole momentum of how you do things. And some of those days she's done those were the days when I was at the lowest at my life, or the lowest at something that turned out to be a phenomenal thing. So that's that. Communication is key. Communication and yeah.
So how could you guys describe, how has the message of grace, how has that not just changed your life, but helped your relationship?
I think it enhanced our communication. It enhanced our relation. It changed everything. It changed our kids, the way we do things. It just changed everything. And I can't even emphasize that enough, because it changed the way we do life. Changed the way we embrace life. Instead, I would say things like, a lot of us, my job isn't to police my kids. My job is to raise my kids and to point them to Jesus. And as I did, but we used to tell kids, you heard me say this before, what we don't do, this is what you don't do, this is what you don't do. And maybe the same way we did things like, but I've learned it's not about telling the kids what we don't do, is we minister to them their identity and who they are and how God sees them. And as I began to do that, grace began to change a lot of the I'm going to call it that religious stigmatism of how it's supposed to be, and it brought a transformation from the inside that rolled over into everything that we do. I would probably say, didn't that help our communication even more? Helped us to see and do things completely different.
Well, yeah, because Dan was very straight. There was no outside the line, no bending, no nothing. And so he followed that through with the girls, with everything, because, you know, a lot of how we're raised in our past affects how we are today. And sometimes we have to step outside of that and say, you know, at one point he hated Christmas. He hated Christmas in the very beginning of us. And because of how he was raised. They didn't have anything, so they didn't have very good Christmases. They didn't go. And so when it came time for us to do Christmas, well, we always had good Christmas. We always celebrated Christmas. We always did good and all of this. And so when I went to start having Christmas with Jessica, you know, we've got a baby. We get to have Christmas. We get to buy for her. We get to... And he was Mr. Bah Humbug. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? What, you know? And he's like, I hate Christmas. Why are you doing this? You know? And I said, whoa, stop. Okay, this is how it is. You can either decide that we are starting over and you are going to make Christmas happy and joyful for your children, or you can stay in the past and lay in that. It's your choice. And that's what life is about. Life is about choices and what we make, you know, and maybe we get lemons. Well, you know what? Make lemonade, because you have that ability to do that. And so you can bless each other. You can bless your children. You can bless other families. And so I told him, I'm like, do you want your children to hate Christmas too? Or do you want to make your children's Christmas good and them to like Christmas? And so he just looked at me, and from that point, he changed his attitude, and Jesus changed his heart, and he became more open and loving and caring. And then when we stepped into grace, and God showed him, because Dan was ready to give up. He was ready to throw it in. He was done ministering. He was tired. He was wore out. And at that point, when he said, you know, God, I'm done. I am done. I am tired. I can't carry this anymore. He was stepping into filling this, Pastor Jim's place, and going, and he said, I can't do it. I'm done. And when he said that, he started praying, and he seen a scripture, and he was looking at that scripture, and he said, God, if you're real and you want me to do this, show me something new. And when he did, he took him to a scripture, and then he found this CD that somebody had laid on his desk, and he put that CD in, and that CD was the exact same scripture that God took him to, and he seen it in a whole new light. And he called me crying. And he's like, so he looked up who this man was, and that man was Dr. Lynn Hiles, who does an amazing ministry. And he looked that man up, and that man was in West Virginia. But that night, that man was going to be in Springfield, Missouri. And he called me, and he said, we're going to Springfield, Missouri. He said, God's showing me something new, and you will not believe it if I tell you. And I said, okay. So we went to Springfield, Missouri. And we sat and we both cried through that whole service, because that man was showing a message of love. He was showing a message of grace, and it was life-changing. And he's like, wow. So as we're getting ready to leave, Dr. Hiles goes, tomorrow night I will be in St. James, Missouri. And we looked at each other, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. We came all the way to Springfield, and he's going to be in St. James, Missouri. And he calls Jimmy, and he goes, Jimmy, he said, you've got to come listen to this man. He's going to be in St. James, Missouri tomorrow night. And he goes, and it's going to be life-changing for us. And they went, and God told Dan, we had never met Dr. Hiles. Dr. Hiles had no idea what was going on in our lives and what Dan was going through. And he said, Dan, he said, this message is for you. It's life-changing. And he goes, you're going to take this message of grace, and you're going to preach it to everybody. Some may stay, and some may go, but that's okay, because they're not yours. They're mine. And he took that message and it changed his life. It changed my life, changed Jimmy's life. It's changed our children's life, and it's changed our families, and it's changed all of your lives. And I thank God that he knows exactly what we need. And when he cried out for help, he met him right where he was. And that man that was from West Virginia was right here at our door at such a time as this. And I'm thankful for that, and our marriage has just grown leaps and bounds. The communication has definitely grown leaps and bounds. Key to communication in marriage is a hot romance life, communication. I mean, it's all important. And trust, that is it. And grace has just opened that to show us so much more and to show us how important just love. You know, the ultimate thing is just love. And to love people, you know, you can point people's failures all you want, but that's not going to help them. And if you start loving them, it'll change their lives. And that's what Jesus says. He said, you know, to love somebody, the goodness of God will cause men to come to repentance. And that goodness is how good he is. And we can show that to each other. You can show that in your marriages and in your lives. I hope that was enough, Jimmy.
That was awesome.
Did I make up?
You got anything you want to add to that? She preached a whole sermon. Right?
It's beautiful.
It was beautiful. So, a couple more. So, somebody did ask this, how did you handle or experience being empty nesters?
It was great.
It didn't last long. Just as I was getting it figured out, it all changed. Empty nesters was different. I remember the first time we go in our kids' room, we both cry. And then when they would come back, we would, thanks for coming. See ya. So that was kind of the transition, not picking on our kids that way, but at first it was hard, and then the empty nester was just strange. And
I think at that point, because
it just let us grow a little bit more.
So life, you always, I mean, we had Jessica, we were married 2 years when we had Jessica. So really, we never remembered just us. And then 3 years later, we had Casey. So in our first 5 years, we had us and 2 children, which was good. We loved our girls. We have very good girls. We're very proud of our girls. And then they grew and went on out, and they both have accomplished a lot. Now they're both moms. But when in that time frame of being empty nesters and it's just us, it definitely was different because, you know, you go back to really, it was never really just us because we were young at the time and not really knowing how to communicate and just learning how to be married and because he's in my space and I'm in his space and he doesn't do this right and I didn't do this right. And in all honesty, it says it takes 5 years. Isn't it 5 years once you get married?
28.
No, 5 years in order to really start to get into a groove of each other and knowing each other's habits and what they do and all of that stuff. And so, I mean, you think you get married, it's an instant change. Well, it's a big change because you take his world and your world and you put them together. And for him and I, we came from 2 totally different worlds. You know, I had a family that was still married and wasn't broken, and he came from, his family was still together until he was 18 and he left for college, and when he came back, they were divorced. So, I mean, it's 2 different worlds. He was raised different, you know. He had alcohol in his family and the partying and that kind of stuff, and I didn't have that. My mom and dad, we were in church all the time, and he did have church. They were in church, but it was just bringing 2 different worlds together and how you react to situations. My family reacts different than what his family reacted, and so marriage is a learning process. And so if you don't want to learn, don't get married. If you don't have patience with each other, don't get married, because that person will never meet up to your expectations.
Yeah, it's
you
always
know,
changing.
it's always changing. And marriage is a job. It is not something that's easy. It is a job.
It's a good
Every
job,
day.
though,
It's a
isn't it?
good
It's a
job,
good job.
but it's a work in progress. And so I encourage you, you know, if you look at getting married or you are married, just take a deep breath and value that person. But so when we were empty nesters and that became to change, we actually looked at each other in different ways because we could be together or we could do or we could go. We didn't have to have a babysitter. We didn't have to have this or we didn't need that. We could go do. We could see each other. We could laugh. We could talk. We didn't have somebody coming and interrupting or needing something. Or I didn't have to focus on kids or dinner because now he's never cooked a day in his life. My children never knew. I mean, he never did anything. He'd go to work. He'd come home. That was about it. And if I called and needed something from the grocery store, what? Why are you asking me such a thing? You know, so I would never ask him to do any of that because he was never that type of person. And I did it all. And our girls, I mean, he didn't do laundry. He didn't do, I mean,
Don't
he
brag
worked.
on me. Don't brag on me.
But after probably...
Love does not keep a record of wrong.
No, but
Keep bragging.
But once Grace came into his life and started entering and started working on him, he became a completely different person. And that his heart changed more for, I think for me, our family, our children, and he began to help around the house. Now he cooks. I come home from work and he's got dinner made.
Smells
and
good, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it smells
good.
good. Like I'm just like blown away, and our girls are totally blown away by this person because that was not anybody that they knew. But he started stepping up and helping, and that is so key in a marriage. Is like he said, it's 100%, 100%. Because maybe I'm working late, but he's home earlier, then he can start doing things. And so the house he lives there just as much as you live there. And it's key to help. And it's a good investment in each other to help each other. And I know through the years, my dad never did any of that. And I've seen my dad, he's helped. He's started helping my mom and doing things. And it's the little things that help so much. That, like vacuum a floor or do things like that. And it's a great investment in each other and in your marriage by helping each other.
I'm not very good at folding clothes, though.
No, please don't fold my clothes. He can wash them, dry them, and then he folds them, and it looks so bad, and he leaves it in the basket, and then they're really bad, and so I just have to dump the basket back in the dryer and tumble them. Yeah, but he can wash them and dry them. That's good. That's a lot.
Darn.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that laundry's something.
You got anything?
No, you're on a roll, honey.
Shonna wheeled out the scoreboard.
But that empty nester, us doing those things are changing. It's just the way that
think it made it
communication
stronger.
and growth and learning, it just has changed how we do. We do the dishes.
I think it's a reset,
We
to be
eat,
honest with you.
We eat, and then we'll do the dishes together. We'll put clothes together, or we're going to go grocery shopping later today. And used to, I'd sit in the car and talk on my phone to Bill or call my brother or somebody while she's in there. Now I go in with her and we pick out things and plan things and stuff like that. So not that I wouldn't talk to anybody, but that's just something we've grown in and learned to do. And if you come to my house to cook, I can't tell you to repeat. I can't cook the same thing twice, but I use whatever she's got in the cabinet, and I ask Alexa how to cook this, or give me the instructions, or I look at a video, and half the time I don't have what we need, but I usually make it work. So,
He uses some wild ingredients.
Oh my gosh, does he ever?
but it's always good.
But I do think the empty nester is a reset. I think it's a marriage reset.
Yeah.
It does help you start to enjoy each other and get to do things that you weren't able to before and that you can do now. Yes, Casey.
We have a question in the back.
I can't hear you.
I actually had that. How did you navigate when you first had kids? And maybe trying to have date night and making your relationship kind of a priority.
We didn't do any of it.
I
From
don't
then,
remember.
yeah. When we started having kids, it was all about the kids. So our life became
Life
about,
becomes about your children.
It became about the kids, and there's nothing.
But we did do dates. Like my mom was there, so and they will obviously love Mama. So and Aunt Sierra, Mama had Sierra, which was she's only 5 years older than Jess and 8 years older than Casey. So they always wanted to go to Mama's house, and Sierra would be like, "You've got to be kidding! They're coming back!" But
I don't really.
we did still. In all honesty, though, when you do have children, you do have to still focus on each other.
We did that.
Yeah,
We
so
did
I
that.
mean, you still go on dates and still do and go.
But we didn't know how to communicate very good, so I would say our communication is 100 times better now
Oh,
than it
yeah.
was then.
Yeah.
So,
So could you almost say, that your expectations were different than
Oh, absolutely.
how they are now?
absolutely.
And
Oh, yeah.
and how would you equate expectations?
Oh my goodness gracious. From then till now?
Yeah.
Man, that's a deep one. Casey, what do you want to give me? I would say our expectations when we were younger, we just didn't know. We just kind of got on the boat and went. Does that make any sense? Whatever direction it went, we went kind of thing. And as time went on with kids, I know that when it came to disciplining kids and doing things, I know we were usually, one of the things we learned right off was we had to be in agreement because the kids could learn how to work the other one. So we learned it was real important for us not to argue or disagree in front of the kids because they would take that to the camp and camp out on it. Mom said, or they said, and it wouldn't resolve. So we would usually, and it would get me in trouble at times because I would usually say, if I said something, I'd follow it through, and I would try to follow it through. It didn't always work out the best for us. So I learned later on to not be careful how I say those things, but I learned that us raising and disciplining the kids, we had to be on the same page. And sometimes I'd say, hey, if I do it wrong, don't tell me in front of the kids, tell me later. And that's how we learned to do that. And then vice versa, and we learned to communicate with that. And both of our kids, and if you ever know, even in raising kids, the first kid we raised was completely different than the next kid. First one,
Every kid is different.
I think, and we're not like beat our kids or anything, but I know Shonna, Jessica, I remember one time at church, Jamie King, and she was messing around doing something with Tashi or something. I said, she's little. I said, you need to apologize to whatever she was doing here at church and Sunday school. And she goes, nope. I said, if you don't apologize, I'm going to give you a spanking. And I remember her trying to look at me and she goes, just give me the spanking. She wasn't apologizing, and that kind of set the tone as this time was going. And her and her
That's how
mom,
she was.
her and her mom would go round and round. And my belt, I'd say, do we have to negotiate? That's why I just called it the negotiator, because she always wanted to negotiate. Where Casey, I think Casey just all I do is raise my voice once or twice, and that was it. I don't think she was. But the two of them they're sisters, but the way that they responded to things was completely different. So that was a challenge for the both of us, because one wanted to challenge everything, and and the other one was like, no problem, I'm in, good, she was so, and we learned to do that.
No, the youngest one was as hard-headed as they came. She couldn't even be bought. You couldn't even bribe her to nothing.
No, she definitely.
No,
But she wasn't
there was
one
no
that we
buying,
had
no
to,
nothing.
Never mind. But she wasn't one we had to always. Jessica was always questioning. I mean, she'd ask Dad, "Can I borrow the car to go to school?" No big deal. Well, she'd drive all the way to Owensville, go all the way across over to you down to Washington, come all the way back around and go to school. And she goes, "Well, you didn't tell me how to go to school, how I could go." It was just little things like that was always the fine print that she would do things like that. So I always had to make sure, understand what I'm saying here. So she would always challenge the rules, which wasn't mean or bad, but she would, well, you didn't say. But with her, I'd have to say, hear what I'm saying and I'm not saying. And Casey just didn't tell you anything. So she was quiet. She'd be blood all over her. What happened? Nothing. I'm good.
Blood all over
Yeah.
her.
And she'd cut herself and cook and cut herself.
So with with having kids, maybe this is somewhat where Casey was going to. How important, or how did you guys try to take time for one another in that whole busyness of things?
Probably at first we didn't a whole lot. And then as time went on, we learned that we needed to take time for each other.
It was important.
Yeah, then we learned how to.
I mean, in the beginning, we didn't understand necessarily how important that it was to take care of your marriage. And So once we did figure out that, marriage is pretty vital here in learning to keep that open communication with each other. I don't know that we went on a date once a week, probably not, but probably about once a month or so we would go on a date or something just to keep that connection, whether we went out to eat or whatever. But again, my mom was right next door, so she would keep our kids. So get somebody that that can keep your kids and go on a date, or a weekend. A weekend date is great. Get you a hotel or whatever and go spend the weekend, or if you can be home and they've got your kids somewhere else. But keep that connection, that is very, very important for your marriage. And it's better if you learn that early on versus if you learn it later. And she's crashing up here.
So what's it like to have grandbaby?
Oh my gosh.
Well,
Grandbabies is life-changing. So a baby, your own children is life-changing. But this grandbaby and my other grandbaby, so I got 2 granddaughters now we have, and oh my goodness. I told my girls, I'm like, I'm sorry, girls, but I think I love them more than you. And they're like, oh. I'm like, well, I'm kidding, but really, a grandma's love, and I guess a grandpa's love is it's just different. And they warm your heart, they melt your heart. She was doing something at my house the other day, and Jessica was there, and she told Casey, she's like, Mom would have never let us do that. She would have spanked our butts, and she was just letting her get in that drawer or whatever she was doing. But, it's okay. I can clean it up. No big deal.
He never would have done this like
Oh,
that.
no. She melts his heart, too.
Okay, was this good today? Is this all right? Okay, I have one last question. All right, one last question. Either one can go first, but what do you admire the most about one another now? Oh, and now here's J-Dub.
This is our other grandbaby, basically.
You say hi?
Say hi. No? Okay.
So what do you admire most about each other?
You go first, Shonna.
Okay, what do I admire about him? He's tall, he's dark, he's handsome. Got a beautiful smile. He's now become a silver fox. I admire his admiration for family, his love. He's got a heart. His heart is for you all, to see lives changed. That is his biggest heart's desire. Yes, she's behind me, Casey. His heart for me, for our children, to see the growth in him through the 30 years that we have been together. So I will give him that. We've been together almost 30 years now. Is amazing to see where we were, to see where we are, to see how God has worked in our lives is phenomenal. And so I admire his heart and his handsomeness. What else you want to know? What'd I tell you? I admire his trust, the trust that we have with each other. I admire the communication. I admire his strength. The love that he shows is probably more than all of that, because at any given time, he is always willing to give. And I admire that for him, or about him. He's a wonderful father, a wonderful grandfather, a wonderful uncle. And so that's what I admire about him. A wonderful pastor.
Maybe I should have went first.
Okay, Dan.
I won't keep. I admire everything about you. I always tell you I love you like a bear loves honey. And this sounds her. She always is. She's my biggest fan, support, but she's my biggest critic. If I'm doing something, she can criticize and say it in ways that makes me better. She criticizes, and she's always there for her kids. She's always there for her family. They might fight and argue, but come to the end of the day, she's going to be right there, top and defending and doing. The trust, I'm going to use the word, I don't know if the word loyalty sounds good, but the trust and the communication in that, the loyalty to that is second to none. She's not saying you need to be like this, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. She's always present. She doesn't exit very much in our journey. She's always present with everything that's going on. She's busy. I always tell people she works like 100 hours a week. Between everything she does, she works as a finance lady, finance and paper, and does all that. And then at the same time, all those people there's there always wanting prayer or advice or direction. And she's doing that. And then she takes time to send somebody flowers here or send somebody a little note just to tell you I'm thinking about you, that you'll never even, it, but she doesn't go around and do it. And she does that stuff in her heart, and then she's always, she's coming home and does all the home stuff, and then usually stops at one of the girls or picks up something for the girls, and I think everything goes great. The only thing that we probably, that I make jokes of is the Amazon thing. She's always buying something to get it.
Amazon's changed my
She's
life.
always buying diapers or buying this or buying that. But anyhow, we got, in the kids things, you guys get over your kids here. But anyhow, Grandpa, it's all good.
They're all good.
It's all good. So, I admire so much about you that my life, I don't even know how my life would be without her. Does that make any sense? I don't see it any other way. And I just really love you. And I love, what we have here, you can't replace that. Does that make any sense? What we have is, she always, I always tell her I'm older, or she's something happened, but I said, whatever we got here, I could never replace that. Does that make, and I quote the story of John Wayne and the story of McClintock, when they're having some rough times, and he talks to his daughter, and he says, and he talks about raising kids and going through the Comanche raids and going up to get milk for the baby or something, and he says there's something that happens between a man and a woman with all that growing together. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but that statement is so true. There's something that happens between all the learning and all the growing that just continually changes. There were several times we could have thrown it in the towel, or several times we could have done this and that, but we both grabbed each other hand in hand, and we worked through that. We prayed about it. We had people. I'm telling you, God has done amazing things in our relationship. He's taken it to places I never thought it could be taken to. And he's brought such a passion for relationship and such a passion for communication and such a passion to do things together that it's just, to me, it's out of this world. It's out of this world. It's a very amazing journey that I have with her, and that she's always, whatever I'm doing a wedding, doing a funeral, doing something, if I'm doing church, whatever it is, she's there to help. She's always willing to do whatever and be part of that. And like you said, I ain't married no preacher. So some of that at the beginning was a lot of fun. But so I just love you a lot.
Yeah, so.
And you're the hottest thing on the planet.
My dad told me the other day I was doing something, and he's like, Shonna, I was going to say something. He's like, Shonna, be nice. And I said, he's like, you're the pastor's wife. I said, I didn't sign up for it. And so anyways, but that was my comment to him. He's like, Shonna, be nice. He tells me to be nice a lot. And I'm like, but I didn't sign up for it. But I'll carry it, so. And I think that I think your marriage is a team. It takes a team. And I say we have an amazing team. So now, I used to tell him we need to go on the Amazing Race. But he said, Shonna, we would kill each other. And we probably would have back then. But I think we could probably do it today. So that's how we've came in 30 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You have anything else you want to say?
The Amazing Race.
It's been an amazing race.
I'll just close with how we grow. Is when we would go on a trip, she would give the directions. Well, she doesn't know her left from her right. And I'm not saying that we can laugh about it, but I understand when she says right, that means left.
Not always.
But most of the time. And when she's left, that means right. She'll be going, I need to go this way. She goes, you need to go this way. And she's pointing this way. And I'm going, you mean I need to go left? Yeah, right. And she would point. And at first, man, it was almost like we need therapy for this because I would be so confused. And when she grabs her phone and turns it different direction. And what I'm saying is we've learned each other enough that we can laugh at that. And I'm a person that if she tells me 1 or 2 or 3 things to do, I'll remember the first one, forget the other ones. And she knows that. She'll say, nope, don't worry about it. Or if I ask her a question, she's of a personality, it takes her 10 seconds to respond. So I count to 10 and tell her it's her time to respond. But we've learned those things about each other and made it more relational than an attack.
That's good.
And as we've learned to do that, that's what I admire. We can take the time to try to figure out how to make it better. And I don't know about you, especially with church and with life and Christianity and relationship is the flavor of how we do things. And when we can learn to do the best and be the best in relationships, I think I've learned this. If we're healthy, then I'm healthy in a lot of other places. But if I'm not healthy here, that I'm going to tell you, if we're not healthy, that can kill a person spiritually. If our relationship is going down the tubes, my spiritual journey can be, or emotionally, and all that stuff can be hindered. So why would I not want to work and make it better? Or vice versa, and as we learn to do that, like I said, learn to laugh, learn to talk, learn to communicate. It doesn't always mean it's, roses, but as we learn to work through some of that stuff, a lot of the things that we wouldn't even communicate now we laugh at and move on, and we don't even bring it up anymore. I don't bring up going, I trust you, or you're this or that, or where you're at, or get me on 360 and know where it's going. He is on
360.
Yeah, she always, but the point is we don't live in that world or that realm of not trust or doubt. We believe in each other, and I think that builds more of a stronger relationship. So I love relationships. I think they're important on every plateau and every domain of your life. When you can learn how to master and learn how to flow in those, you'll be a lot healthier and a lot stronger. And like I said, in relationships and around the world, you're not everybody's cup of tea, but you're somebody's cup of tea, and learn to grow from that and build from that. So, and that's what I got, Jimmy.
I just think, as far as a team goes and our relationship with each other and just growing, knowing if you have a healthy marriage, you're going to have a healthy life, and that's going to affect everything else. So your jobs, your children, your everything you do, your marriage is going to affect it. And I think putting Jesus in the very center of your life and knowing that he is for you and nothing can be against you, you will go places. And just knowing that and holding to that hope.
And can we say we had to choose each other?
Yeah.
We had to choose to work on this. We had to
it's a choice.
We had to make that choice, and we had to choose to be vulnerable and choose to say, well, this bothers me, or I don't like this, or this or that, or I don't understand this. And as we chose to do that and work through it, that made us stronger, did it not? Mm-hmm. So that choice, that's a big deal. Choosing whatever relationship you're in now, good, bad, it can be better if you choose to make it better, if you choose to work on it. And it's not always about me trying to fix her. That's a big mistake just by saying that in the sense. It wasn't me saying, well, this is your problem. It was me learning to work on me to be a better me that would in her doing that wanted me to be better. Does that make so you can, wherever you're at, I don't care if you're 100 years old, 10 years old, relationships are something you can always be learning and growing and making better. And it will change, it will affect your spiritually, emotionally, mentally, physically. It'll change everything you do. I've been with work people and they're not getting along with somebody and their whole day at work is a zero because their relationship at home or the relationship is this is zero or something in their family or something. All I'm saying is whether you know it or not, it affects every area of your life. And why would we not want to bring it up in church? Because church, learning to grow in those things and build on those things can be life-changing. So God bless America.
Everybody enjoy this today? All right. Let's all stand to our feet. And to close, I'm going to ask Dan and Shonna to pray for everybody, pray for everyone's relationships. And then close us.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you this morning and we just thank you and we praise you for this day. And Lord, I just lift up at each couple that's here and everything. Lord, I ask that you know exactly what's going on in their lives. You know everything from beginning to end. You know their heartbreaks. You know their ups. You know their downs. You know their strengths, their weaknesses. And Lord, I ask that you just draw them together like a love that they've never felt before, a strength that they've never felt before, that they know that your grace is enough, and that your word says that no weapon formed against us will prosper, and that no weapon formed against their home, their marriage, their children, their jobs, their lives will prosper, because your plans are always bigger, and your plans are always greater, and your direction is the best that we can go. And Lord, I just thank you, and I praise you for that.
And Father, I just speak blessings for everybody today as they leave here, as they go about their week. Father, the power and the presence of the Holy Spirit just continues to be with them everywhere they go, everything they do. They're always at the top, never at the bottom, that everything they put their hand to continues to grow. Father, I thank you for wisdom and insight and an appetite to just continue to learn and grow in every area of their life, just continues to blossom and flourish in all their todays and all their tomorrows. And Lord, I thank you we don't live from doubt or trying to put some kind of schemes or some kind of plan, but that we continually trust and rest in all that Jesus has done and provided for us. And I thank you that greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. In Jesus' name, and everyone said, amen.